For the last 2 weeks, we saw the S&P 500 close down now, so it's 2 consecutive down week. So is the market ready to do a little bit of a pullback? And if so, where is it going to pull back to? In this video, I'm going to show you some of the level that I think the market might be pulling back to, so kind of keep an eye on, and also some of the level that we could keep an eye on for some of these FAANG stock. So stay tuned. Now, before we check the market internal and auto sentiment along with the ETF and also the FAANG stock, let's quickly do a rundown on the performance of the index from last week. And as you can see from this this chart here, this table here, we see that the Dow Jones Industrial was the best performer for the week. It only lost, almost broke even. Actually, it only lost 0.02%, while the Russell 2000 was the worst performer, lost a little bit over 2%. And we see the S&P 500 also didn't do too much. It only lost 0.13%. The New York Stock Exchange Composite lost 0.25%. The NASDAQ Composite lost 0.7%, and the NASDAQ 100 lost over 1%. It lost 1.17%. Dow Jones Transportation 1.14%. And for the month to date, the New York Stock Exchange Composite is actually the top performer with a gain of 1.37%, followed by the S&P 500 with a gain of 0.41%. The Dow Jones Industrial lost almost 0.75% at 0.72%, and the NASDAQ Composite lost 0.74%, and the Russell 2000 lost 0.76%, and the NASDAQ 100 is actually lost 1.31%, followed by the Dow Jones Transportation lost 2.16%. And here's the little surprise here on the year to date. Look who's leading the pack here. It's actually the S&P 500. It gained 7.28%. Remember, just a week back, we noticed that the NASDAQ 100 was the leader of the pack. And right now, we are seeing it is way down here at fourth place. So second place is the NASDAQ Composite with a gain of 6.41%. The New York Stock Exchange Composite almost 6% at 5.91%. And the NASDAQ 100 only gained 5.84%, while the Dow Jones Industrial gained 2.72%. And the Russell 2000 gained 0.6%. With the Dow Jones Transportation year to date, the only index with a loss of 2.52%. So that's a summary of the performance of the indexes. Let's take a quick look at the sentiment and also the market internal before we go and jump in on the index ETF and also some of the FAANG stock. And looking here at the VIX here, we see the VIX came up a little bit, in the past week. It's sitting at 14.41 on Friday, but it's still far away from this 20 level. So in a sense that the market participant is still not really fearful, it's pretty still complacent. And also the put call ratio just barely sitting at 0.75. So although it's not as bullish or risk on as in the past weeks, but it is still in a little bit of a risk on mode here for the market participant. And here looking at the New York Stock Exchange up-down volume ratio, other than on Thursday, it's really not much of a negative, on the up-down volume ratio. So we did see a little bit of a sell-off on the PPI, on Thursday, and also the daily advanced decline got a little bit negative. So we did see some bond market sell-off on Thursday. But other than that, it's pretty much neutral for the most part of the week. And here on the new high, new low, we did see a little bit of a contraction on the number of stock making new highs. So it kind of show a little bit of an exhaustion or, kind of tiredness here on the market. They're getting a little bit exhausted. So, but right now, we're still not seeing too much of a stock making new 52-week low, although it came up a little bit, sitting at 56, but still relatively a small number. And the number of new highs still outnumber a new low by 52 on Friday. And we are looking at the New York Stock Exchange cumulative AD line. So although it came down a little bit, but it's still trending upward as the S&P 500 also came down a bit. And look at the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ showed a little bit more weakness last week. You notice that throughout the entire week, the up-down volume ratio was negative. So that means there's more selling than actually buying. And also only on Friday that we got a little bit more advancing issue over the declining issue by a margin of 233. Other than that, most of the week was negative. And again, just like the S&P 500, the New York Stock Exchange, the daily advanced decline was pretty broad-based on the downside on Thursday with the PPI report. Now for the NASDAQ new high, new low, we did see Thursday and Friday it kind of flipped from positive to negative. In other words, from more new 52-week high than 52-week low to more new 52-week low to 52-week high. So we are seeing a little bit of a weakness inside of the Nasdaq here. So we got to pay attention here. You notice that the number start making new 52-week low, creeped up a little bit, although it's still relatively low in terms of recent history. Okay, so but again, turning from positive to negative is a little bit concerning here. So we got to be a little careful. And this is nothing new, as we've seen that the Nasdaq cumulative AD line been showing a negative divergence with the Nasdaq 100. So that is continued. We are seeing another down week for the year. So it's down slightly, but it's still holding inside of this value area here. And also I have this little trend line, so it is still holding above this trend line. And looking on the daily chart of the ES, we see that I have a upper range for the coming week. The expected move is between 5,275 and 5,264, and the lower range is 5,105.50 and 5,080. So for the coming week, I'd be watching to see would it be able to hold this trend line. If we break this trend line, I'm looking for this thing to come down to this low volume zone here and see if we'll get a rejection and auction back up to this upper range of this value area, because I'm looking at this auction here. Now, if we break this low volume zone, then I will be looking for a test of this lower range of the expected move and see what to get a bounce back inside of this value area and then pushes up. So that would be some of the downside scenario or pullback scenario for the coming week. Now, for the upside, if it able to break this, this upper area and put in a new high, I'm looking for this upper range to get taken out. And if it exceed and move above this expected range, then I'd be looking for a 1x extension of this value area. And this is about 126 points or so. So if I use the Fibonacci extension tool, and we could do a little bit of a projection here and get a 1x extension, and that would bring it up to somewhere around 5368, 5370, that area there. So that's what we're going to be looking for in terms of the upside if it breaks into a new high. In the SPY, we see that it finished with a little bit of a graveyard doji spinning top, or whatever you want to call it, or shooting star. But essentially, it is printed a inside week, inside of previous week, which is a doji type of a spinning top weekly candle. Now, it is still inside of this value area, and it is holding this trend line. And on the daily chart, we see that there is a upper range for the coming week, expected move between 519.30 and 517.70, and the lower range is between 502 and 500. Now, for the coming week, if we see a pullback, then I'll be looking at this trend line here to see would it be able to hold this trend line and push us back up and work itself back up toward the upper range of this balance area here. Now, if it is unable to hold the trend line and breaks, then I'd be looking at this low volume area here around 505 and then see would it get a rejection and pushes back into this value area and work itself back up to the upper range. Otherwise, I'd be looking for it to come down, hack this low range, and then see would it again get a bounce back up inside of this value area. So we'll be watching for that. And for the upside, we're basically looking for this thing to hold the trend line and come up to this upper range. And if break the upper range again, just like the ES, we're basically looking at a extension move of this balance area here. We're basically looking at this balance area, and we will use that to extend it 1x, and using this Fibonacci extension to just get a little bit of a projection. Then on the 1x, we're basically looking at 529.65 or 530 level there for the upside of 1x extension. On the QQQ, we see that the QQQ broke the trend line here last week. So we see a 2 consecutive down week, but it is still inside of this balance area here. Now it broke this high volume node, and right now we're basically looking to see would it be able to hold this low volume zone when it comes down here in the coming week. And if we take a look at the daily chart for the Q, we see the upper range is projected to be somewhere between 445.50 and 443.50. And the lower range is 424.40 and 422. So basically, I'm looking to see would it be able to hold this low volume zone and then come back up to test this high volume node and then push us back up into this upper edge, the upper range of the weekly expected move. Now, if it is unable to hold this low volume zone, then I'm looking for this thing to come down and test the lower range of the weekly expected move, then see would it come back up and test this low volume zone. And then depending on the reaction here, would it come back in or would it get rejected and push back down? So those are the scenario on a pullback for the coming week. Now, if it is able to hold this low volume zone and come back up in this high volume zone, remember, then we're basically looking for this all-time high here to see would it be able to put in a new all-time high. Then again, we're basically going to project this extension here if it is continue to move higher, and using the Fibonacci extension tool, just kind of get a little bit of a approximation of what we could project up to this 1x extension. And we see that there is the possibility of coming up to this 463.62, somewhere around 464, 463 area. The IWM also had a down week after a strong previous week, which finished with a sort of indecision type of a spinning top candle here, this weekly candle. Now, right now, it is still holding this trend line here, but it is getting close to this low volume zone. And we see that the market is projected a upper range of between 208.80 and 207.70, and the lower range between 198 and 197.20. Now we see that it is sitting right on this trend line here. So we'll see, would it be able to break this trend line, come down to this low volume zone and hold, and then push us back up into the upper range of the weekly expected move. If it doesn't get a little bit of a rejection from this low volume zone here, then I would expect it to come down and try to test this lower range of the expected move, then possibly, auction back down into this area here, somewhere around 190, or this low volume zone between 187 and 187.50 area, because we're still looking at this, value area that has been sort of balancing for quite a while here. Now, if it is able to break this value area, then we will be looking for a higher level, and we'll be looking for a 1x extension of this range. And that would be quite a range here for this thing to trace out. So let's go and get a little bit of a projection here. And we just use this area here instead of this lower zone. So be a little bit conservative, and we use this upper edge as the upper range of the value area. And we'll see that it could get up to this 222 level. So that would be one of the possible scenario for the upside. If it does hold this trend line, come up, break this upper range in the coming weeks, then we'd be looking for a possibility of moving up into this 220, 222 area. On the diamond here on this weekly chart, we're seeing another graveyard doji here. We saw a doji a few weeks ago here near the top. And right now it is sitting at this trend line, also inside of this value area. So we're going to see, would it be able to hold this value area. Now I do have a small trend line here on the for the diamond, and the upper range for the coming week is between 393.30 and 391.40, and the lower range is between 382.60 and 381. So for the coming week, again, basically looking to see would it be able to hold this trend line and be able to get a bounce off of this low volume dent here, and see would it be able to bounce up to the upper range of the weekly expected move. Now, if it is unable to hold this trend line and it breaks down, then I'd be looking at this level here, somewhere near this 385, 386 area, and see would it get a bounce back up. If it is unable to get a bounce back up, then I'd be looking for this thing to auction down to this lower range, because we're also looking at this balance area. So it is still within this balance area here, even though it come down to the lower range, and we still could get a bounce back up and auction back up to the upper range of this balance area. And once again, if come up to the upper range and break this upper value area, the value area high, if we just kind of look at this like a value area, then we do a extension using the Fibonacci extension tool and project this thing up. So let's get a little bit of approximation, and we do it up here to this upper edge. And we see that the 1x extension could push it up to the 403 level, 403.50 area. So those are some of the scenarios to look for in the coming week for these index ETF, and also for the ES, the E-mini S&P 500 futures. Let's take a look at the 11th sector in the S&P 500, starting with the XLK, the technology sector. As you can see right now, we are looking at the XLK sitting right on this trend line here, and also it's trading right here at this high volume area. What we will be watching for is would it be able to hold this trend line and move back up above this high volume area and try to auction back up to the high here. Now, if it doesn't hold this trend line and it break this high volume area, then I'll be looking for price to work itself down to this 196, this low, low volume area here. And here looking at the healthcare XLV, and by the way, this is the relative strength. This is the line relative to the S&P 500. So you can see that the XLV is a little bit lower than the beginning of this area here, this level here. So you can see it is not as strong as other sector, but in regardless, it is trending up. And you can see that it is holding at this area here. Here's the little bit of a balance area that we're looking at. And here right now is sitting right inside of this, basically like a balance area or a consolidation area. So I'd be looking for price to see would it be able to bounce back up into the upper range, the upper level of this range here. Now, if it doesn't, then I'd be looking for it to break out of this range, break down from this range and move to this low volume area and try to come down to this balance area. Then we could see prices moving down toward this 137 area. And for the consumer discretionary, we're looking at the consumer discretionary sitting right on the trend line here. It broke this high volume no. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this trend line break and then come down to this area here, somewhere around this 176 area, basically this potential support area, and then see would it get a bounce back up. Now, if it doesn't, then I'd be looking at this high volume area here, down here at this 173, 171 area to see would it find some acceptance, for basically support. Recently, the financial has been strong and it is still sitting above this trend line and also inside of this balance area. Is pretty much in the upper portion of that. I wouldn't be surprised to see this continue to move higher and break out into a high. Now, if it does come down and test this trend line, then I'd be watching for this high volume area here to see would it be able to hold this high volume area. Otherwise, I'd be looking for it to come down and possibly test this low volume zone near the 40 level. And for the communication sector, we see that it is inside of this balance area. You see how it consolidated for the last couple of months. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a little bit of a breakout on the upside into a high if it could stay above or hold this trend line here. Now, if it doesn't hold this trend line and it break below this, low here, essentially this, this balance area here that I'm doing earlier. And if it break below this, then we see this low volume area here, and it could just kind of flush down into this high volume node here, and basically filling this gap. And we'd be talking about somewhere around 76 and a half area. And looking at the industrial is also holding about this trend line, is sitting right at this high volume node. So I'll be looking to see if industrial could come up and make a high. Otherwise, look for a break of this trend line and possibly come back down to this low volume area at 119 and a half or so. And looking at the consumer stable has been strong as well. It's holding above this trend line here, and it is sitting right here at this high volume area. Looks like it got a nice little bounce off of this this low volume dent here. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the stable continue to move higher and take out this high here. Now, if it comes down, then basically looking for this trend line as a initial support area. So keep an eye on this trend line. That would be somewhere around this 74.30, 74.50 area. And for the energy sector finally broke out of this consolidation or this balance area here. And you see that it broke this trend line, this descending trend line. Right now is coming up toward this potential resistance area here. So we probably will see some resistance up here in this region here, between 92 and a half to 94 area. So see what the price get rejected up here and try to pull back. And if it does, then I'd be looking at this area somewhere around 89 and a half or so, coming to this gap for potential support. Basically, maybe do a little bit of a back test of this balance area, breakout. So keep an eye on that if it pulls back. Otherwise, be looking for a break above this 92.5 and possibly push up to a high above this 94 area. And here for the real estate section here, I mean the sector, see that it is sitting right at this high volume area, on the edge of this high volume area. Now, if it break this trend line, then I expect the price to come and chop around inside of this area, because you see there's been a lot of acceptance here. Now, if it could hold above this trend line, then look for a move back up and possibly, maybe come up and test this particular area here, at this edge, somewhere around the 40 level. And material has been quite strong. You see that is way away from this trend line here, and it is up here at this balance area, and it is trying to break this into a new high here, or at least take out this high. So I'm not sure is it a new high or not, but at least keep an eye on this high here. So if it continue to move up, look for it, take out the this high here. Now, if it come down, I'd be watching this 89 level, this low volume zone. That's basically this gap here. And if come down to this gap, then I'd be looking for the price to retrace back down toward this trend line here. And that would bring it down to somewhere around this high volume edge at 86 area. And for utility, it is coming up against this descending trend line and hitting resistance here. And it kind of pulling back and sitting right here at this high volume node. So we'll see, will it be able to get back above this high volume node and try to break this trend line? And if it does, then we could see this thing move up into this area here, maybe possibly get into this low volume zone. But at the current environment, most likely we're not going to see the Fed cutting rates soon. Then this might be under a little bit more pressure on the downside, and we could see a pullback into this area somewhere around the 62, 61, 90 area here on this high volume zone. Because we could also draw another trend line here. You can see that it could pull back into this area for potential support. Looking at some other sectors, starting with the semiconductor, we see that semiconductor made a high and pull back into this low volume area here. So we're going to watch to see, would it be able to hold this low volume area and then push this back up? Otherwise, I'd be looking for this thing to come down to this first trend line. This is a little bit more steeper trend line here, and extensionally come down and fill this little gap here. So to see, would it get a bounce back in to this balance area here? Now, if it doesn't hold this trend line, then I'll be looking for it to come down to this other trend line here, and that would bring it down to this high volume area and also into this gap fill, possibly work itself down to this 180 area if this trend line doesn't hold. And look at the home builder. The home builder has been strong as well. You see that it is continuing to push in a high, and right now it's coming down and sort of consolidating right near the trend line here. So if we look at this, if it break the trend line, then I'd be looking for the possibility to come down into this area, this low volume area here, for a test of potential support. But if it could maintain up inside of this value area, then I'd be looking for the home builder to possibly push into a higher high here. And here's the retailer. The retailer has also been quite strong recently, but right now it seems to be pulling back a bit. Right now it's still holding this trend line and holding this low volume area. So we'll see, would it continue to get a bounce back up toward the high? But if it break out of this balance area, then I'd be looking for this thing to come in to this high volume zone. So basically come down to this low volume area and break through it and come into this area if it doesn't get a bounce when it get down to the 73.67 area. And for the biotech, we did see some strength, recent strength on the biotech. It did come up and looked like it just recently broke this little bit of a steeper trend line here. But again, it is still holding at this high volume area here. So basically this balance area that I'm looking at. So as long as it's inside of this range, I'll be looking for it to potentially break out of this high here. Now, if it break through this range here, then first sign is to look for this trend line to see whether it's able to hold this trend line. And if it doesn't, then we're basically looking for this balance area down here for the next level of potential support and consolidation down here. So for now, I'll be looking to see whether it's able to get back above this area here. Right? If it could get above this area, then I'd be looking for a move up to the high and possibly take out this high. If it unable to hold this area here, then I'd be looking for a break of this trend line and possibly come down to this area here. There's a little bit of a volume dent here somewhere around 129. And looking at the long-term bond here, the TLT, we see that it recently broke this trend line here. And right now, it could be working itself down to this area near the 92. So we'll see what it be able to find some support at the 92. It did, previously. So we'll see what it be able to come back up. It did, came up and sort of, got close to this trend line, counted some seller here and pushes down. But right now, it did not hold this trend line. So we're basically looking at this 92 area for the next potential support and see would it be able to push back up and possibly break this trend line and maybe work up for this area here and get up to this 98 level. But right now, it's more looking like it be coming down to test this 92 area. So those are some of the sector along with the 11 sector in the S&P 500. Now let's take a look at the FAANG stock. Remember last week I was talking about Apple. As long as it hold above this 172.04, then we're basically looking for Apple possibly come up to this gap here at 177.38. So right now it's holding above this level here. So what we could do is we could set up a little bit of a swing trade if one want to. And I'm going to use this little Fibonacci retracement tool to set up my R&R type of scale here. So you can see if we use this low as a stop and enter somewhere above the high here, we could get a 2R of return if we targeting this this gap fill here on Apple. Now, if Apple come back down and dip below this 172.04, then we could be looking at this 168 and possibly come down to this 166, basically testing this low here. And looking at Tesla, last time we were talking about this low here to see would it be able to hold about this 169.25. And if it could, then we're basically looking for this thing to possibly move up and fill this gap. As you can see, on Thursday, it moved lower and came down to this 160, 151. So right now, we'll see would it be able to hold this level and then come back up to this 170, 117. Then we'll reassess for a possibility of a little bit of a quick trade swing up to this level here and fill up the gap. But right now, basically, are looking at this thing to see would it be able to hold this 160.51. And it is, if it is unable to hold this level, then we'd be looking at the possibility of coming down and test for this low here, come down to this low volume area. So basically, looking for the possibility of testing 152, 153. And for Netflix, we're looking at the possibility of holding above this low here, this 592, and then come up and take out the high. As you can see, it almost did take out that high on Friday, then it pulled back. So once again, we're still going to be looking at this 592. As long as it holds above this 592, we're going to look for this high to get taken out. So in other words, put in a new all-time high. And for Meta or Facebook, we're looking at this low here, 476. As long as it's hold above this 476, then we're looking for the possibility to come up and put in a high. So right now, it's trying to get above that 497.32, and it's unable to hold above that level. So right now, it's still holding above this 476. So as long as it could hold above this 476, we continue to look for the possibility to get back up above the 497 and push into a new all-time high. Now, if it breaks this 476, then the next level that we'll be watching for potential support will be 453.01. And that breaks, then we're basically looking for this huge gap to get filled. And for Google, we're looking for this gap to get filled. And as you can see, it filled that gap on Thursday. Then on Friday, kind of do a little bit of a pullback. So we're still looking for this thing to come back up above this 142.44. If it could get back up above this 142.44, then we are looking at this gap to be in play, this 146.67. Now, if it is unable to get back above the 142.44, then we'd be looking for another pullback, also to get back to this 133.58 level and check over here to see would it be able to find support. Now, there's this high volume node here at 137, so that could also provide a temporary support there, and we could see a bounce to come back up to this 142 or just chop around before it come down to this 133. And for Amazon, we're basically looking for Amazon to put in a new high here. And as you can see on Thursday, it came close, but it did not put in this high here, it did not take out this high. So right now, it is sitting right at this 174.47. So as long as it can hold this level, we're still looking for a push into this high and possibly put in a new all-time high. Now, if it dipped below this 171.47, then we'd be looking at the possibility to come back down to test for support here at this 165.74. And for Microsoft, we're looking for Microsoft to put in a new all-time high, which it did on Thursday. Then on Friday, it pulled back. So right now, it's still holding about this 409.91. So as long as it could hold above this level, we're still looking for a higher high, because we're also looking at this possibility of this trend line. As long as it holds above this trend line, we're basically looking for Microsoft to continue to trend higher. Otherwise, if it breaks this trend line, then we can see it come back down and possibly test this 398.39. And for NVDA, we're basically looking for the this level here, 841.66. As long as it holds above this 841.66, we're looking for NVDA to possibly come up and possibly test its all-time high and maybe put in a new all-time high. So right now, it is still above this 841.66. Want to see would it be able to come back up to this 887.97 and hold above that, then we could see this high be in play. Now, otherwise, if it come down and break below this 841.66, then we'll be looking at the possibility of this 771.25 to be in play, because then we'd be looking at this trend line break. Then that could change the character of the price action. And when it get to that point, we will reassess. And for AMD, we're looking for AMD to possibly come back up and fill this gap near the 205 level. And as you can see, it was unable to do that. And it came back down to this 183.80. So right now it's bouncing between this 183.80 and 192.70. So we'll see, would it be able to get back about this 192.70? If it does, then this gap is still in play. Now, if it dipped below this 183.80, then I'll be looking for this high volume area to get retraced and come back down to this 161.81. Essentially, these low here and test for support here. And here on Super Micro, we're basically looking for this 11.11 to see would it be able to hold above this 11.11 and come up and put in a new high, or at least take out this high here. You can see on Friday, it broke down and dipped below this 11.11. So it's key to see would it be able to hold this 976 level here next week. And if it doesn't, then we're basically looking at this gap to get filled. And also this steep trend line here, you could be broken this steep trend line and come down to this 976 and see would it get a bounce. And if it doesn't, then we could be looking at this level here down at this 800 area as it come down to this little bit of a high volume area here. So those are the mega cap FAANG stock and some of the meme stock like the SMCI, so an AMD. So if you like this video, be sure to smash the thumbs up and give it a like. And also, if you are new to this channel, be sure to click the subscribe to help support this channel. Thank you for watching and good luck on your trading.